Want to know the secret to a great night's sleep? It's Purple. Why? Because only Purple mattresses have the Gel Flex Grid. It's the reason why Purple mattresses are soft where you want it, firm where you need it, and instantly respond to movement. The Gel Flex Grid flexes around pressure points to support your whole body, no matter how you sleep. Plus, the Gel Flex Grid is 80% air. It breathes, so you're not too hot or too cold. Learn more about Purple mattresses and the Gel Flex Grid at purple.com. Purple, reinventing sleep.
One of the main difficulties is to try to remember why I'm doing adventures, as in when I'm up on a hilltop, I should be out there because I want to do it, not just because it'll look great on Instagram. And the second aspect of it, I need to remember that social media is not real life, and I should not necessarily believe everything I see or even put on social media, and just keep myself grounded in reality a little bit more.
Hey folks, welcome to the Adventure Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Mason. Happy New Year. Hope you're doing all right. And speaking of New Year, I'm taking it just a hair easy this weekend. So I don't have a new episode for you, but I have a really amazing revisited one with one of probably my biggest inspiration early on in my adventure career, which was Alastair Humphreys. There's not enough I can say about Alastair and the impact he's had on me and how much I enjoyed this conversation from a couple years ago. But his book, Moods of Future Joys, about his journey around the world, his bike trip around the world, I highly recommend it. It really set the tone for my life and for my adventure kind of mindset. So it was awesome to talk to Alastair. I'd love to talk to him again soon, but I thought it was just a good one to replay. I hope you're doing great out there. I hope you're getting outside. I was self-admittedly having a terrible day today after a botched camping trip, and my wife forced me out the door for an hour of paddleboarding. And I'm like, that's not going to do anything. Just getting out there, for a little bit of time when I was going to have this long trip. But man, it just totally turned my day around. Just 1 hour of paddleboarding was all it took to just totally change my day and maybe my week and maybe lead to something even better. So don't neglect. What you can learn from Alastair is don't neglect the smallest bit of time you can get outside, the smallest bit of time you can get doing an adventure. And so this whole mindset he has and what the book he's authored about Microadventures is so important, so absolutely important. So don't neglect the Microadventures. They are as important, if not more important, than the big ones. All right, let's go ahead and jump in.
Where are you calling me from today?
I'm supposed to ask you that question now. I'm coming from Denver, Colorado. That's home.
Okay.
Yeah.
I briefly was there a year or so ago doing a talk. I did one talk in Boulder and then one talk in a very boring hotel in Denver, a flying visit.
Oh, really? Wow. Well, was it just a speaking engagement?
Yeah. So luckily I managed to tie together two companies into one plane trip, which was good.
Oh,
yeah, it was just a brief visit, but
that's awesome, man. That's great. And so where are you coming from today?
I'm in a little shed in my garden where I work. It's just outside London.
How far?
Well, about half an hour on the train, so not really in the wilderness, unfortunately, but it's quite a convenient place to be. And I have a nice post-it note in front of me now saying climb a tree, because on the first of every month I go and climb the same tree near to where I live, a big, huge old oak tree. And I'm doing it once a month throughout the year. And today, this is the first time there's going to be green leaves on it. So I'm really looking forward to that when we finish our talk.
Oh, man, that's fantastic. Oh, gosh. So is that part of your micro-adventure campaign?
Yeah, sort of. It's just I've realized that I like doing things that kind of measure out a year, whether that's the seasons or once a month. And something like climbing a tree every month, you see how obviously the tree changes through the year, but also it's just a chance for me to think about how my last month went and think what I'm going to do the next month, and just be a bit more observant of time passing. Plus, I get to climb a tree like a kid.
And I'm sure that doesn't take too much time either.
Well, exactly. It's literally, it's about 5 minutes to my house. I climb the tree, sit there for 5-10 minutes, and come home. And it's becoming a genuine highlight of my year now. I climb to the same point each time and take a photo in the same place. You can see how the tree is changing. So it's a nice progression through the year.
I have a mountain right behind my house, and I know we're going to talk about it, but I love the Microadventures. We interview a lot of people from the UK on this show. Almost every single one of them mentions the word Microadventures.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Well, I need to start trademarking this and making some cash.
Another revenue stream right there, man. You copyright infringement. But
I'm not sure that's quite the spirit of the game, is
right,
it?
Right.
Not suing people's ass.
What I love about it is that these activities like that, you just kind of, in the busyness and how serious life is, you just kind of neglect little things like that. Like, I can't possibly take time away from all these meetings to go climb a freaking tree. There's, you know what I mean? That seems so. Can you imagine opening up some businessman's journal to see that pinned down?
Yes, yeah.
But
actually, it's the people who think that they are too busy to do that who actually need to do it the most, isn't it? They're the people for whom it could be a real, genuine, transformative experience.
There's a small hill behind our house. It climbs maybe 1,000 feet, maybe 800 feet in a couple miles, and my friend's a financial advisor downtown, and his job sounds terrible to me. I mean, it sounds like just meeting with rich people all day and, kissing their butts all day. And we go and climb this, and we see deer and elk, and we see the white-capped mountains all behind Denver. And it's right outside. I mean, it's in town, but it had been so long since he'd done something like that. It felt like we were, trekking in the Himalayas. It was awesome.
Nice.
That was just last week. So.
Oh, nice.
Oh, it's incredible.
Yeah, it's nice to try and build up the habit of those things as a way for a chance to hang out regularly as well, isn't it?
Absolutely. So, man, I don't even know where to start. I want to say thank you, first of all. Your first bike trip inspired me to do my first, which was
cool.
3 months now. 3 months long. It was Alaska to Florida, just over a summer over a year in university, and my best friend and I, and man, it kicked off this entirely different trajectory in life I never expected, leading, to this podcast and a number of other things. So thanks for your influence in that.
Oh, nice. When I cycled up America, I found it so hard to decide which route to take, because you go up the West Coast, you go up the East Coast, you go up the middle, it's like being in three completely different worlds. So I like did you go diagonally across?
Yes, straight diagonally. I'm just right across from one corner to the other.
Did you go through Oklahoma, or?
We went through Montana, Nebraska, Kansas, Missouri, Arkansas, and then a little bit into Wyoming, and just kind of zigzagged our way down, seeing interesting points. But it started with you and this other two guys. You might know their names. They were in school, and they decided to go from the magnetic North Pole to the magnetic South Pole without engines. Yeah. And they sailed, they rollerbladed, they biked. It was random as can be, and they were in National Geographic. And man, it was all these Brits inspired us, to be honest.
James Hooper and Rob Gauntlet.
Okay, that's who it is. I'm going to write that down because I didn't know their name.
Well, the sad part is that James died a couple of years after doing that in a very simple climbing accident.
No kidding.
Yeah, just on a holiday, not even a sort of expedition climb, just climbing with a few buddies. Yeah, he was really, really young.
I think that now that you mention that does ring a bell about something. I think I looked them up afterwards, and oh man. Yeah, and we just had a tragedy in the mountains a few weeks ago in Canada. A couple of big name climbers got caught in an avalanche, and it happened. That's terrible.
Yeah, that's another reason to stick to Microadventures.
You come home to see the kids, and now
Yeah,
you speaking of which, you have kids, don't you?
I do. I've had them entirely removed from my internet adventure life for many years.
Is that intentional then?
It has been, yeah. Just you know, trying to make your career out of the internet is such a weird, a weird thing to do, and
Uh-huh.
and building a brand around yourself, and to some extent having to sort of show off about yourself, and and I have to be very careful not to start believing my own uh, BS. So I've been, for various reasons, I really wanted to separate my real life from my adventure online life. So I kept them very separate for that. Um, but actually, the recent book that I've written is the first time I start to talk about being a dad and the challenges of trying to combine being a good dad with being an adventurous free spirit, and sometimes the seeming incompatibility of the two things. So it has been something that I kept away from the internet, but I've started to think, wow, actually this could be a useful conversation to talk to people about.
The swirl of, balancing who I think I am based on these trips I've done versus who I'm going to have to be now, that's been a really interesting thought process. And I'd love to hear from someone who's been down that road before. And we do talk to a lot of guests that are going through that life transition now.
Yeah.
But I mean, is there anything you want to speak to that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I thought I could have it all. So my theory was that I could be this cool, exciting adventure guy who was continually off in the wilderness, and also be this brilliant modern dad who was at home all the time. I hadn't quite figured out the contradictions between those two things, and I certainly hugely underestimated the impact it would have on me. And I think because my adventure life has in many ways become my life. It feels very much my identity and who I am. When I stopped doing a lot of that stuff because I was becoming a dad, then I really felt a huge loss of identity, and really spent a long time struggling to figure out, okay, if I'm not that anymore, then what am I? Who am I? So and the micro adventures was one of my main ways of trying to figure out how it could still try and live adventurously, but also domestically. Yeah, I think, well, you're in for a big shock, that's for sure.
I'm prepared for the worst.
Yeah. Well, no. Hope for the best. I mean, it's been without a doubt the greatest adventure of my life. But it certainly gets in the way of big adventure plans. Or, well, actually, or you take them with you, depending on your choice of life. But in my case, it's certainly got in the way of big adventures. And then you just have to start looking differently at adventure.
Interesting. Because I've read a lot of your stuff in your blog and some things you've written. You enjoy having those two different lives, like life in London and life on the road and adventure, correct?
Yes, exactly.
So you haven't intentionally integrated the two.
Yeah, I enjoy the different sides of life. Also, my wife, she only enjoys one of the sides of life. She thinks the adventure and sleeping in the tent is a stupid thing to do.
So she doesn't go camping or anything.
No, she's got more sense.
Oh man, I'm so glad you said that. That's interesting. That the pinnacle of the adventure world in a lot of ways. You're a big figure in that. Has chosen that something like that.
Yeah, there's a heck of a lot more to life than going on an adventure, that's for sure. So yeah, I certainly enjoy the variety of aspects in my life, whether that's being in big cities. I love big, crazy, noisy cities, and then I love being in the mountains away from big cities. So I think I think the variety of life is what I enjoy, and that's also been reflected in the different adventures I've done over the years. I never chose to become, say, a specialist mountaineer, just climbing ever harder mountains. I've preferred to be a bit of a jack of all trades, doing some biking, doing some running, doing some hiking, different kinds of trips. I think, yeah, the variety of life is what I like the most.
Do you think it's different for somebody who's only had micro adventures to have that same sense of true adventure like you've had? I mean, I'm going to go into more detail in the intro of this about your background, because
Yeah.
I know you have a billion accolades we could talk about. But you have those huge year long, multi-year long experiences, and now you have Microadventures to sip on, to experience. How do you think it'd be different for somebody who's never had that big experience to start it all off?
Well, I think microadventures have been a brilliant part of life for lots of people. And there's, a lot of the joy I've had from the big journeys you can get from cycling for a weekend or hiking for a weekend or camping out for a couple of nights. So a huge percentage of the benefits of adventure you can squeeze in around the margins of real life. And I've been really trying to champion that. However, there's no doubt that that can't compare really to this sense of enormity of, say, being on the road for 4 years non-stop, or being in a little rowing boat 1,000 miles from land in a storm in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. There's a sense of epicness and scale to that you can't get in small things. But and so I'm endlessly grateful for having had those opportunities and seized the opportunities to do those big trips. Yeah, there's something pretty epic about doing something pretty epic. But on the other hand, it's not something that is often achievable. And therefore, I think we just need to do what we can with what we have and do it now, as one of your wiser presidents once said.
Absolutely. Yeah, a good president at that. Yeah. That's interesting. Having been able to do a lot of people probably told you that was a once in a lifetime experience. At the time, did you believe that? And now do you say, yeah, that probably is true? Life gets complicated quickly.
I think when I was cycling around the world, those 4 years in my late 20s, I think I anticipated then that I would, to some degree or another, spend the rest of my life being some sort of wild man, whether on the road or living in strange and crazy countries. I certainly anticipated that was what my life would be. I definitely didn't expect that I would have a shed and a mortgage and two kids. But then again, if you'd asked me my life when I was 10, I'd have probably said that I anticipate spending the whole of my life eating ice cream and watching cartoons on TV. So what we're after in life changes over time as well, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And speaking of that, you've mentioned before that your career has been non-strategic, in just kind of how it's unfolded. Has that changed at all now that you have more responsibility?
Yeah, I think I get a bit torn in life between trying to plan so that you can head in a direction you want to be going in life, because you can't get everything you want right now, and a lot of things you have to work towards for many years. So in my case, that's making a living out of the adventure stuff. So there's a case for planning ahead, but there's also the argument of you don't know what you're going to want to do in life in 10 years, so you should get on with what feels important and exciting and meaningful right now, and just try and do your best to not close off too many avenues through those decisions. So in my case, that meant years ago, I thought, "Oh, I love adventure stuff and I really don't want to sit in an office. So I'll just go and do a load of talks to schools and elementary schools and high schools and earn enough money just to stay alive while I write a book,
Right.
because that's what I want to do right now with my life." And then that has progressed from doing school talks and writing magazine articles to now just making my whole living out of doing adventure stuff, but with the slight pressure now that I need to pay for pay for a mortgage, and middle age, my first ever prescription reading glasses. So yeah, your needs change. The needs of the reasons why you're doing your work, I suppose, change over time. But I still wake up with the same joy and excitement of thinking, "Wow, great! It's a day in the office today. I absolutely love what I do."
Wow. So, I mean, I don't know if this is a front or just how you come across. Are you a happy person, truly?
um, I'm very happy when I'm doing stuff that makes me very happy. and then I'm quite grumpy when I'm doing stuff that makes me grumpy. And that sounds like a bit of a,
So you're
it
like the
sounds
rest
like
of us.
yeah, exactly. That sounds like a stupid answer, but actually it's really true for my life. Everyone, um, pretty much, well, anyone who's listening to this, unless they actually know me, will only have heard me talking with enthusiasm about adventure and travel and stuff like that. People who know me in my real life will sometimes be surprised by how enthusiastic I sound here, because back home I'm grumbling away about boring real life stuff. So,
Interest rates and insurance plans. Yeah, I
oh,
totally
well,
get
I'm not sure I'm quite that boring, but yeah, that sort of thing.
it. Well, things that have to be dealt with.
Yes. One of the best things I did, but I did it years too late, was spending money on a accountant rather than trying to do all that complicated stuff myself. So now I just pay her what she asks me to pay her, and I pay the government what she tells me to pay the government, and I trust her, and it's freed up my brain and so many happiness percentage points.
Thankfully, my wife is not so phobic of all these responsible things, so she's able to handle a lot of that. And man, the value of having a partner that can fill those gaps is unbelievable.
Yeah.
You're building this, or you've built this career. It's kind of like all on your shoulders. Do you ever feel like, have you ever wanted to throw in the towel and say, this is just too hard? Or has it been a steady, consistent climb for you? Let's take a quick message break and hear from the folks that help make this show possible. Hey, Kurt.
Hey, Mason.
If you don't know, Kurt is the former host of Adventure Sports Podcast. Kurt, I heard you had a little story for us.
Okay, true story. A couple of years ago, I decided it was finally time to get just the right ski for me. But ski technology changes so quickly, and I really didn't know what I needed, so I just went to Powder 7, and I told them my skier ability, how I wanted the ski to perform in the POW and on the corduroy and in the bumps, and they pointed at a ski in the wall and said, I think this is the one for you. Of course, they showed me several others and told me how they would differ, but in the end, they said, but based on what you said, this is probably the one. I have never had as much fun on a ski as the one that they recommended for me. So if you're going to buy new skis, why not buy the right ones for you? And to do that, go to Powder 7. They really know what they're talking about.
And I also wanted to add, they have pretty much perfected the art of buying skis online too. So even if you're not in the area, they have a very robust website, extremely helpful. And the cool thing too, they do sell a lot of used demo skis. So I know we on the show are always looking for deals. That's a great way to save a little money if budget's tight right now. So definitely check out Powder 7 by going to powder7.com. Again, that's powder, the number 7.com. All right, let's jump back into the episode.
I guess, for quite a few years, like anyone starting out, I had a lot of worries about money and crikey, is it possible to earn enough money from talking about myself to make this viable? Can I make this work? Can I make it work? And it's become a great relief now that I've got to a nicely happy, sustainable point whereby I'm pretty sure that as long as I keep doing this, I can pay the bills. And that's great. That's a huge relief. Every so often, though, I think, wow, I've been doing the same thing for about 20 years now. Maybe it's time to go and become a carpenter or a fireman or something like that. So every so often I consider that I should go and do a big change. But then the trouble is I can never think of anything that is so much fun and so requires so little actual hard work as what I'm doing now. And therefore I just keep doing what I'm doing. And the third aspect of me thinking that is a serious one, in that it's like the old story of the golden goose. I'm the golden goose of my life and my business. So in order for me to have a living, I need to keep doing interesting stuff and writing and talking about it. And that means that when I'm 60, I might have to go and sleep in a tent on some mountainside when I'd much rather be sitting on the sofa watching TV. So I'm conscious that I'm kind of playing a young man's game with no exit strategy.
It's like a beautiful bartender that begins to age. So sometimes a younger, prettier person is going to step in one day and kick you out of your job.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I've started to do quite a few bits of work for different brands now, so making films for them or stuff like that. And I just had my first rejection this year on the grounds of I don't appeal to millennials, which is
Really? What was that about?
it was some brand wanted to showcase their product, and they decided that if I was doing it, that wouldn't appeal to millennials. So that was my first wake up call that I'm getting old.
Wow, man. That is funny you say that. We had some young guys on the show a couple weeks ago, and we heard from all these high school and college kids saying, wow, it was so refreshing to have a young person on the show. And I'm thinking, hey, I'm not old. Like, what are you talking about? I'm still young. But I'm like, yeah, to them, we're talking to a bunch of mid-30s, maybe early 40s-year-olds. And to me, that's not old. But, to them, it seems like a lifetime away.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. How did that rejection feel?
I think I'm too old to care about things like that. But it did make me realize what you're just saying, that the sort of people who are interested in the stuff I talk about, I think a large number of them have grown up with me. They've started reading my stuff when I was cycling around the world, and then I've got older as they've got older. And it did make me think, I wonder whether 18 to 25-year-olds have much interest in what I say, and if not, does that matter, or should I try and change? And pretty much the answer I came up with is what I always come up with, and I'm not sure if that's because it's a good answer, or it's because I'm lazy. But the answer was, I think I just need to keep doing what I do it for the reasons that feel important to me, not for other people's reasons. Keep doing it as well as I possibly can, and then hopefully everything will work out all right. And generally, when I've stuck to that policy, things have gone well. The times when I've tried to chase fame or fortune are when it generally doesn't go so well, and I end up hating myself.
Yeah, I would totally agree. Don't try too hard to be someone you're not, for somebody you're not, because, man, maybe you won't appeal to millennials or whoever's next, but you know what? If you're going to be working on the middle-aged crowd right now, I promise you, there is an endless market for angsty parents who want more adventure in their life.
Well,
every other one I talk to.
Yeah, for sure. And Microadventures, the whole world of Microadventures has opened that up to me so clearly. And I've actually recently started a new email newsletter called Living Adventurously, which is me trying to figure out my own life, I guess, but just articulating it through newsletters about trying to just live adventurously within the constraints of normal real life. And the emails I've been getting in response to that, they definitely show me that there is a large market of frustrated adventurers out there.
Absolutely. We've had some guests talk about, transitioning from adventure to more professional life, and why that's not a bad thing, and why that's, their desires change in time. And that is just something I guarantee the 25-year-old version of you could never understand at 25.
Well, exactly. I mean, I've recently spent a month busking through Spain, and consider that one of the greatest adventures of my life. The 25-year-old version of me would have completely sneered at such a pathetic, wimpish, non-hardcore pretense of an expedition. So yeah, I'm very, very conscious of that.
That's man, that's funny. So with not appealing to millennials, however, you're pretty active on social media. How has social media changed what you do?
Well,
it's a little vague. I realize.
No, it's not. It's not vague at all. The internet has completely facilitated me turning my hobby into my job. And I started my blog, although it wasn't called a blog then. I started it in the year 2001. So I've seen a lot of transition periods for how people use the internet, and social media coming in, say, the last 10 years has for me had a lot of advantages and disadvantages. The chief disadvantage in my mind is the complete race to the bottom in terms of shorter attention spans, less challenging articles, easier things to write, just a dumbing down of stories. I find that frustrating, and yet the good side of it, of course, is there's this endless appetite for content and the potential to find your exact little niche of people. So I'm not going to appeal to a million people, but I perhaps appeal to thousands of people who are looking for exactly the same sort of stuff that I'm looking for. And in that sense, it's an absolute gem of a thing for making this choice of lifestyle viable. One of the main difficulties is to try to remember why I'm doing adventures, as in when I'm up on a hilltop, I should be out there because I want to do it, not just because it'll look great on Instagram. And the second aspect of it, which we touched on earlier, is I need to remember that social media is not real life, and I should not necessarily believe everything I see or even put on social media, and just keep myself grounded in reality a little bit more.
Is that something you struggle with?
No, it's one of the reasons why I've chosen so vehemently to separate my real life from my internet life. There's huge amounts of things that I do in my life that it just never occurs to me to get out my phone and tweet about, and I'm really glad of that separation thing. So the only struggle comes really when I'm out doing something vaguely adventurous. That's when I'm starting to think, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, hang on, this isn't just a bike ride. This is work. And then my brain starts worrying about, I should try and tell some sort of story about this, which is a bit annoying, but it's a heck of a lot better than most day jobs. I'm very aware of that.
Wow, man, I didn't know that was an intentional thing for you, because I'll be honest, until I started researching for this interview, I did not know you were married and had kids.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've deliberately kept them completely apart, really, just for some sort of sanity thing. And actually,
how do they feel about it?
They feel fine. Yeah, it's my wife doesn't write about me on her office LinkedIn page, so I don't think and I don't feel too sad about that. The change for me really was a couple of things. One was I was noticing increasing numbers of people yearning to do adventures, yearning for microadventure stuff, that sort of thing, but struggling because of the constraints of real life, of family commitments, essentially. And I realized that I was in a position to try and perhaps help these people by talking about that, and yet I never had chosen to do so. And the second part was as I was writing my book about Spain, which was, on the one hand, it's a simple adventure story of busking through Spain with no money, but to leave it as only that was missing out a huge part of why I did the trip and why it was important to me, which was as a way of me trying to try and resolve a lot of these conflicts and dilemmas and being pulled in lots of directions that I was facing in my own life. And that trip was a way of me trying to consolidate it all and sort my head out and accept that middle age had fully arrived. And so writing that in the book forced me really to think, right, well, I just need to now tell the world about this sort of stuff. And what I have to do now is make sure that I keep a separation in my head from work and real life still.
What is busking? I'm not familiar with that term.
Oh, sorry, busking. Busking is when you stand up in the street and play a musical instrument and someone gives you money.
Oh, so like panhandling or like a street performers, we call it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, wow. Yeah. I didn't know that.
So what did you do?
Okay, well, that's interesting. I need to translate this for my that
American might be brethren. A term. I definitely know people that do that. I just never heard that term before.
Okay, yeah. So my favorite travel book from about a guy 80 years ago walked through Spain playing his violin. And I've always loved that book and wanted to do it, but I can't play the violin. And the idea of performing in public terrifies me. It's like one of my deepest fears, up there with karaoke. So I decided that as a way of trying to, again, change the way I look at what adventure means to me, rather than just going off to do some tough guy adventure thing, what I should really do was something that really scared me and really was filled with risk and the chance of failure, which was to go and busk, to play my violin through Spain for a month, and to make it spicy, to do it without a wallet or a credit card, and only surviving from the money I earned from my very, very bad violin playing.
So you can't play.
No,
Do people pay you to stop playing?
Well, yeah, I am that kind of. I'm as bad as that is what you'd expect. I really, I did 7 months of lessons before I set off, which for the violin is really not very much practice at all. So I could play 5 songs of about 20 seconds each. And they were very, 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 very bad indeed. People would walk down the street in Spain looking at me with this strange look on their face of, what on earth are you doing? You're clearly not from Spain. So what are you doing in our country playing this terrible attempt at music? It was very, very embarrassing, nerve-wracking, but quite amusing experience.
That had to be terrifying.
Yeah, exactly. And I find it really interesting how standing up and playing a musical instrument in a little village in Spain, to many people sounds as scary as getting on a bike and cycling across a continent, if not more so. And it really gets into the heart of the stuff that so often stops us doing the adventures we want to do, which isn't the practical constraints of not having a good backpack. It's more the fears and worries and what will people think about me, or people like me shouldn't be doing this. I'm a grown man. I should be doing a spreadsheet or something. These inner fears and vulnerabilities that stop us doing so much stuff. That I think was at the heart of this hike through Spain.
I wasn't aware that. I mean, I read that you did that, but I didn't take the time to look up the word because I wanted to ask you. Man, that is an adventure. That's a true adventure. Because for you, and I understand this, and a lot of our listeners understand it, at some point, riding 100 miles on the bike through a desolate highway it's not an adventure anymore because you're so used to it, and it's not challenging you anymore in a lot of ways. Whereas that, holy cow, it's short enough to not be gone from family too long, but long enough that you really are into it. And you're doing something every day that's so uncomfortable, but you have to do it to continue. You don't have another way of continuing because you don't have any money. That's hilarious.
Yeah. Well, an interesting part of it was, I walked 500 miles from the north coast of Spain to Madrid, and I slept out every night because obviously I could never afford a hotel. But so conventionally, walking 500 miles and sleeping out every night, conventionally, that would be what people consider an adventure.
Absolutely.
But I noticed that none of that crossed my mind until the first day when I was in Spain and I opened the map for the first time, thought, right, I've got a walk to do. It had not even crossed my mind. And that's exactly as you say, because that's easy for me. I've done that many times in my life, and my brain was totally filled instead with the thought of having to stand up in a quiet, beautiful little village square and play to try and earn €1 to buy a loaf of bread. So yeah, I think the things that we do as adventurous people, I think it's interesting for us to ask ourselves, is this still adventurous, or am I actually just stuck in a different sort of rut and in a different sort of comfort zone?
Were you ever standing out there with the violin screeching in your ear and you look around as a 40-year-old man and say, what the hell am I doing out here?
Yeah, and that was one of the main reasons I did it. And I was a 39-year-old man, so I was on the cusp.
My apologies.
But it's an important point, because I was approaching 40, and I was worried about the best years of my life being behind me and all that sort of classic midlife crisis stuff. And so yeah, a lot of the whole trip was me asking, what the heck am I doing? And then specifically, standing in a square looking like an absolute idiot was so embarrassing. But that was kind of the reason I wanted to do it, just to try and shake off the shackles a bit and be a bit more liberated with life.
And so did it do that? Let's take a quick message break and hear from the folks that help make this show possible. On this show, we talk a lot about the adventure, but it's honestly the time between the adventure that is most important, being adventure ready, as we say. And the most important aspect of that is knowing your body and knowing what's going on inside your body. And the most important company that can help you do that is Inside Tracker, literally tracking what's going on inside your body. Inside Tracker analyzes your body's data and provides you with a clear picture of what exactly is going on so that you can make changes to your diet or see what's working, what isn't. And how they do it is they analyze all the data from your blood, DNA, lifestyle, and fitness trackers to help you optimize your body and know what's really going on. So if you'd like to learn more or get 25% off the entire Inside Tracker store, go to insidetracker.com/adventure sports. That is insidetracker.com/adventure sports. Inside Tracker can get you ready and keep you ready for all your favorite adventure sports.
It's not easy being the one everyone counts on to keep the facility running, no matter the weather or supply chain hiccup. But we get you, Raymond in Buffalo, and Maria in Miami, Jules in Minneapolis, and Stan in Central Indiana, taking control of everything that's under your control. At Grainger, we're here for you with experienced branch staff at over 250 locations so you get the product you're looking for. Call, clickgrainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
It takes a lot of ingredients to fix or build a car, like cooking, but without the frozen dinner easy way out. eBay Motors has 122 million parts. It's always the right fitment, so you can follow any recipe to a T. Whether it's a vintage Italian coupe that's classic like Grandma's meatballs, or a German luxury car that's as complicated as Oma's rouladen. To cook up something great in the garage, use the eBay Motors app or visit ebaymotors.com. Let's ride.
That is plenty of that for now. Let's get back into the episode.
Oh, it was absolutely wonderful. I was when the first day I thought this is a disaster, and then eventually this kind old gentleman handed me €1. I earned some money on my very first day, and it was the most thrilling way I've ever earned money. It was incredible, and from then on, the whole month was just completely filled with joy and excitement, and thinking, "Wow, this is exactly what I'm looking for in my life." It's adventurous, but in a different way to what I've done before. It's really challenging me, but in a fresh way. And it's because I was earning so little money, I'm also living incredibly simply, the simplest food. And then all I have to do every day is walk 20, 25 miles and find a hill to sleep on at night. And the sense at the end of the day of thinking, wow, I've done everything that the day asks of me, and I'm now sleeping out under the stars. It was just a joyful, brilliant, wonderful adventure.
That is adventure. It's completely out of your comfort zone for most of it. It seems like you're not an expert in any of that, but anyone can just start walking. Anyone can start doing something so simple, but adding all those elements of not bringing your own money. Yeah, man, that's exactly what adventure is. So is it safe to say you're not going to ever be the type of person that needs to climb Mount Everest to complete their adventure resume?
I spent 5 years trying to do a very, very big and difficult expedition to the South Pole, and in the end, I had to pull out of that because two little kids came along, and it didn't seem the right thing to do. So that. I'd be lying if I said that doesn't sit in my mind as a significant regret for not having done this big elite challenge that I set my heart on for so many years. But on the other hand, time moves on, as we've talked about, and these days I'm very happy climbing trees around England. I'm trying to get my adventure kicks without flying as much as possible these days, and just swimming in beautiful rivers, climbing trees, reading good books. I think maybe I'm finally growing up.
There's an element of simplicity in all that.
Yeah, I think I'm dating all the way back to when I spent 4 years on the road, just literally wearing the same shirt every single day till it rotted apart. I've noticed that when there is simplicity and purpose in my life, that things generally seem to be heading in a good direction. And it's when things when I head away from that path that I get less content, I think.
Yeah, I think I've seen in pictures, it might be in your shed, there was a quote on the wall that said, "The best things in life are simple, but not easy."
Yes, well, I'm a very big fan of the difference between the words simple and easy. I think that's summed up a good adventure is one that's simple but not easy as well. I think I strongly believe that.
What part of building a career and continuing a career, what part do you like the least with what the work that you do?
Okay, that's a really good question. The parts I like the least are the admin, so taxes and accounts, uh, answering lots of emails.
Yeah,
Um,
sorry for that.
yes, so I dislike that side. Having to sell stuff. So, I spent the whole day yesterday trying to work out a social media blitz for trying to sell my book. And man, I didn't really enjoy doing that. So I think I enjoy pretty much everything else, but I sometimes get a bit weary and worried that my greatest stories are in the past, and I still have to tell people about that time when I cycled around the world 20 years ago.
And it's coming up on 20 years since you started that trip. I mean, it's a few years from now, but
Yeah, no, it's 18 years now. This summer will be 18 years.
wow.
Gosh, so that means I've been talking about cycling around the world for lots more times than I actually do it. I feel a bit like the rock star who goes on stage and has to keep the crowd happy with his greatest hit because no one really cares about his artistic new album.
Right. Right. That's fascinating because there's definitely a stigma of like living in the past and all that, but it's such a man, it's so amazing out there, and the things you've seen are so incredible. It's hard not to spend a lifetime talking about it because that's almost how long it takes to process the whole thing.
Yeah, that's a kind way. That's a kind way of putting things. I think the problem I had was once I started to label myself as an adventurer, for quite a lot of years, I only felt as good as my next adventure. So what I'd done in the past didn't really seem to matter to me. The important thing to me, and pretty much every interview I ever did, was what's next, what's next, what's next. And I felt this pressure on myself and perhaps perceived, but from society at large, that I was only still interesting if I had something epic in the pipeline, and I didn't like that aspect of trying to be an adventurer for quite a number of years. I think the Spain trip was quite a cathartic experience for that, in me being able to say, "Hey, actually, I'm not going to cycle around the world again for another 4 years." And if that bothers you, then I'm sorry, but that times are a changing.
Yeah, times are changing, man. So for you, with the times changing, um, what is in your pipeline? What are you excited about right now?
um, I'm really enjoying writing. I mean, writing's always been what I've loved, and for so many years, I mean, I've written 11 books now, but I still
Yeah,
don't feel like a writer at all. I always think that's what I enjoy doing, but I get paid from doing talks at conferences, not from being a writer. And I had a bit of a mental breakthrough around the end of last year when I asked myself, why don't I just consider myself a writer, make that declare to myself I am a writer, and then see what I have to do in order to try and make that happen. So I'm now more committed to trying to be a writer, to write more books. And the book, I've started to write a book now about living adventurously, but I've decided that as I write each chapter, I'm going to stick it online as an email newsletter. So I'm kind of giving away my book for free live whilst I'm writing it, and people can follow that along. And it's a good pressure for me to get on and write it. And I'm enjoying doing it as a sort of more open source project. So I'm just trying to find different ways to write that are hopefully interesting and hopefully useful. And that combined with some exploration, micro adventures and small adventures close to home, seems to be keeping me happy these days.
that's great, man. That's great to hear that the changes in life, they're necessary and they're not a bad thing. And those things that are so amazing to people. No, I just think a lot of people are going through that, to be honest. A lot of people that were very adventurous early on and maybe realize, I feel like, you start out, this is how I put it, it's like you're in a rowboat. It's really easy to control, but it's only capable of so much. And as life goes on, you build up families, all this, this brand almost, this following, these experiences. And it's almost by the end of it, you're in this cruise ship to where any turn takes so much longer and so much more calculation, but it's also capable of so much more. But it's not as agile as you were before, where I could just say, break up with my girlfriend and bike around the world for 4 years, with
Yes.
$10,000. But they're both beautiful things. Man, that's very interesting. So with being a dad, what do you hope for your kids to do with their life? What do you hope that they see from you and that they do?
Well, one of the reasons that I decided to go do this Spain trip was I hadn't done any sort of decent adventure for a few years, and I was trying to, I would like them to be curious and wild and bold with their lives, whatever direction they go down. But I realized I had kind of stopped living that way myself. So going to do that Spain trip was a bit of a demonstration to them as well as to myself that I could still try and live adventurously. So that's all I want from them really, is to choose their path consciously, not just follow the herd, choose the direction they want to go, and then do so with great enthusiasm and to be as weird and curious and wild as they dare to be.
You ever see yourself going with them or them going with you, doing something together?
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, my son's current ambition is to become a professional soccer player. So I spend most of my life at the moment driving him for practice. We've struck a deal that if he gets into the Premier League, then he's going to give me $1 million to pay for taxi fare. So I'm kind of hoping he just becomes a football player, and then I can retire on his wages.
Hey, wouldn't that be nice? And isn't that the dream of every young boy and girl to be something huge like that? Which I think is where it starts.
Yeah, exactly. And then, in reality, given that the poor kid has got my sporting genes, I'm pretty sure he's not going to be a professional athlete. And all I hope then is that when that crushing disappointment settles in, he doesn't settle down for a boring life of mediocrity, but instead sets off on some other crazy, ambitious dream and sees what direction that takes him in.
Yeah. I will say on the really hard days, that boring life of mediocrity does sound pretty appealing sometimes.
Oh, there's a huge amounts to it that there's a lot of good things to it. The main thing I would urge is that it is done by choice. You're choosing, right? I want to do this for whatever stability, happiness, blah blah blah. But making it an actual conscious choice, I think, is a really important part of what I I think you've got to choose the direction as much as you're able to do so.
You look at someone's life and see, man, I would love that stability. I would love just to look forward to cooking out with the family this weekend rather than trying to, do so many interviews or so many speaking engagements or write this much of the book and just let someone else essentially pay my bills for me. But yeah, a lot of the people don't choose that and they feel stuck in that, which it's all, I guess, relative.
Yeah, exactly. And I've certainly learned over the last number of years to not make the mistake of judging someone's life by what you see from the outside of it. So, I'm sure there's times in everyone's life where they're wishing I could do this, I wish I could do that. But I think you're on a pretty good path. And you've got the biggest adventure of all coming up, becoming a dad. You've got some adventures ahead of you.
Yeah, man. And I will say something about it seems so common. Like, it's not an adventure. Everybody does this. Did you feel that way?
Let's just say I spectacularly underestimated it.
Oh, I feel that I'm gonna be in for it then. Oh
Yeah,
man.
get some sleep.
Oh gosh. Oh gosh. No. No, we already struggle with that.
Okay, the only bit of sensible I have no sensible advice to offer anyone on this subject, except one thing I began a week before my son was born was a website called Mail Diary. And you get an email from them every day or every week, whatever you want, and you just reply with a couple of lines and it forms a diary. And when you first do it, it's not that interesting, but I've been doing it most days for about a decade now, and that's built up into a huge treasure trove. So like anything, you start with something small, do it regularly, and it turns into something big and meaningful in the long run. So yeah, I'd sign up for that if I was you.
That's a great idea. That's wonderful. So speaking of which, how can listeners learn more about you and your most recent project, your book? Just go ahead and plug that.
Okay, so what I would love people to do, one is to buy my new book, or listen to the audio book. It's called My Midsummer Morning, and it's on all the usual places you can get books. And then sign up for my new newsletter, which is called Living Adventurously. You can find that on my website. And then I'm on all the social media things as Al Humphreys.
Perfect. Well, any parting words of wisdom? I really appreciate you being on, by the way.
I just think you need to go climb that hill behind your house and get some sleep in the next couple of weeks. That's my advice for life.
That's a great place to start. All right. Well, you got a tree to climb, and I don't want to take up more of your afternoon. Alastair, man, I really appreciate it. You've definitely been a huge inspiration in my story and my best friend's story, who just texted me, and it changed a lot about our lives and coming from that, our family's lives. So,
thank you. That's very nice to hear. That's very kind. I'll send you a photo from up my tree.
Okay, sounds good, man. All right, well, have fun.
Cheers, Mason. Thank you.
See ya. First of all, thank you so much for listening. It means the world to us that you choose to listen to the show. If you'd like to help us further, you can leave a review on iTunes, share us with your friends, your family. It goes a long way to grow in the show. You can also support us financially through patreon.com/adventuresportspodcast. Link is in the show notes. And also, if you have an idea of who could be a good guest for the show, we're always looking for people to tell their story about the outdoors or adventure. So if you know someone, please reach out. Email us at info@adventuresportspodcast.com. And until then, get out there and have some fun.
Without the ones like you, who work tirelessly to keep things running, everything would suddenly stop. Hospitals, factories, schools, and power plants, they all depend on you. No matter the weather, emergency, or time of day, you're the ones who get it done. At Grainger, we're here for you 24/7, with supplies and solutions for every industry, and access to product specialists ready to help. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Moms, at Vanguard, you're more than just a parent. You're the heart of the family. You're the first responder to any need. You can be the hero and the villain, sometimes on the same day, because you know that in the end, your legacy is the values you instill in them. At Vanguard, you're more than just an investor. You're an owner, because the future you're building is bigger than yourself. Discover the value of ownership at Vanguard.com. Fund shareholders own the funds that own Vanguard. Vanguard Marketing Corporation Distributor.